Hey guys, we're doing language class. We're going to be doing page 163 and page 164. Now, at the beginning of this video, I kind of wanted to mention that we're going to be having a language test. Not tomorrow, the day after. Tomorrow is just going to be a studying day for language. So I'm going to mention at the beginning of this video the things that you're going to want to know for your language test. So maybe you want to write these things down. On page 163, Think A, you're going to have a section like Think A on your test. You're going to have a section on your test where they'll tell you maybe a declarative sentence or an interrogative sentence or an imperative or declarative, and they'll give you a word and say use this word in an interrogative or a declarative or imperative or exclamatory. So you're going to need to know your sentences, what kind of sentences they are, how to use them. Make sure you're writing with capital letters at the beginning and an end mark at the end, things like that. You're going to need to know how to diagram your adverbs, and on page 164 you're going to have a section just like Think B on 164. They'll have a sentence and they'll tell you find the adverb in the sentence using the question when or where or how often or whatever the adverb question is. So make sure you're very, very familiar with these things that I mentioned. Like I said, you'll be having them on your test not tomorrow, but the next school day that we have after that. Tomorrow's just going to be a studying day, so use this first couple minutes of the video where I mentioned the things on the test to maybe study tomorrow when we have that study day. Looking over on page 163, just kind of reviewing that ER, EST ending that we are going to have, just like I said, reviewing it. Use ER when you're reviewing two words or two things or people or places or whatever. So, like it says in the book, David is older than Stephen. That's two different boys that are being compared. Or you could say David is the oldest boy in the class. Well, there's more than one boy in the class. So you're comparing three or more people in this sentence. And I don't really know if David is the oldest person, but it's in the book, so we'll just go with it. But like I said also before, like I've also said, we also can use the word more or most in place of that ER or EST. We can use that with words that are a bit bigger, like more useful, more beautiful, or most useful, most beautiful, things like that. And don't use that ER and most, or ER and more, or EST and most. Don't use them both together, so it's bigger, not more bigger. We don't use that. Or biggest, not most biggest. We don't say that. It's not correct. We might say it, but that doesn't mean it's correct. And it goes back to the whole practice speaking correctly. So if you're speaking and you say, this is the most worst day ever. Worst is already, and that's something else we're about to get into, but worst is already on its own something that compares. We don't say most worst or most better or most more better or whatever it might be. Definitely don't use those things. So that's another thing. If you look in that purple box at the top of the page, the last thing, it says some adjectives change completely when we use them. So we have bad, worse, worst, and good, better, best. Make sure you also are familiar with those words as well. Look over at Think A. They just want you to write the correct adjective. So are we going to use ER, EST? Are we going to use more or most for these words? And how many things are we comparing so we know which one to use where? So Nathan's pillow is, then they have the word fluffy. So we don't know, is it fluffiest or fluffier or most fluffiest or most fluffy or more fluffy, or we'll see. Then William's pillow. So Van William's pillow tells me what I'm comparing it to. So we have William's pillow And what are we comparing William's pillow to? We're comparing it to Nathan's pillow. So that's two things that we're comparing. Nathan's pillow, William's pillow, two things. So we're either going to use that more or the ER. So we have the word fluffy. Fluffy. Well, that's a bit of a smaller word. We're going to use ER ending. So when you write it, notice you have Y at the end. So it's not going to be FLUFFYER. It's going to be FLUFF, change that Y to an I and add ER. So it's FLUFFIER. Make sure you spell that correctly. I only want you to do number 2 and 3 for Think A. So I'm not going to do it with you. I want you to try on your own. Do 2 and 3 for Think A. And maybe you get a pencil and circle these because I'm going to just go through it so we know what we're doing. Think A, 1, 2, and 3. We just did number 1 together. Think B on the bottom of the page. I only want you to do one of those. So you can do either number 1 or number 2. You can choose whichever one you want to do. But you're writing a sentence. Make sure you're starting with a capital letter, ending with a end mark, whatever the end mark might be, a period, question mark, exclamation point. But make sure it's correct. On the next page, Think A, just 1 and 2. Think B, this one's going to be a little bit different. 1, 2, and number 4. So it's 3 sentences, but it's 1, 2, and also number 4. And if you would like to do a little bit of extra work tomorrow when you're studying, you might do the rest of Think B to just kind of get some practice in for the test. And the same thing with Think A on page 163, because you're going to have a section like that on your test as well. So tomorrow, it might be a good idea for you to do the rest of Think A on 163 and the rest of Think B on 164, just to get some good practice in. And then remember C, they already did number 1, or that first word for you. So the word eat, they want eat how, politely. It's a good word for it. And then eat when, well, tomorrow. So you see how those 2 words are answering their respective question for the word eat. I want you to do any 3 words that they have. So they have the word jump, sleep, pray, and read. That's 4 words. You're only going to do 3 of them. So you can do the first 3 or the last 3 or just any 3 of those words that they give you. But you need to come up with those 3 verbs that you choose. You need to say, how did this action happen? And when did this action happen? So I'm not going to go over Remember C with you. And I'm not going to go over Think B on page 164 or page 163 with you, because I want you to do that on your own. It would be good practice. I'll just mention my grandmother prays for me daily. They want you to just underline the verb or verb phrase. So underline the verb, and then they give you the question to ask. So take the verb, say the verb happened, and that question is how often. So the verb happens how often, and then whatever word in that sentence answers the question how often, circle it, draw an arrow from the adverb to the verb that it describes. Well, of course, the only verb in the sentence that it can describe. But I wanted to really take a focus on Think A. You're not going to have a section like this on your test, but I do see us maybe having a little bit more problems with this because there's a lot of boxing and underlining and circling and drawing an arrow and stuff in this section. So I wanted to take a look at this. So in this section, we're just doing the first 2 sentences, and I have them up here on the board. So we have number 1, Ryan's blue wagon has a broken wheel. So first, find my subject and verb. So I actually have in the sentence verb from the helping verb list. So am, is, are, was, were, be, being, been, have, has, had. Did you find my verb when I went through that list? Right, the word has is on that list. Have, has, had, the very last part of that list. So underline the word has 2 times. And then I want you to take that verb and say, has, like who or what has. So who or what has in this sentence? Well, Ryan, even though it looks like Ryan might be, why is Ryan not my subject. It has something at the end of the word. It has that apostrophe S. That apostrophe S, no, can't have my subject with an apostrophe S at the end because that means that it is possessive. Possessive words can never, 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 never be nouns or be subjects specifically. So Ryan's is not going to be it. So who or what has a broken wheel? Who or what has? The wagon has. The wagon has a broken wheel. Ryan doesn't have a broken wheel. The wagon has a broken wheel. So underline wagon one time and has two times. Go ahead and separate that subject and predicate with a line. And then I'm going to take the word wagon. It's a subject. It's a noun. We're going to box the noun, just like we've done before. And are there any other nouns in this sentence? Yes, actually. A is not a noun. Broken is not a noun. Wheel, however, is a noun, is a thing. So let's box the word wheel. And up here we have the word wagon. Wagon. And I may say, what kind of wagon? What kind of wagon? Well, it's a blue wagon. So circle the word blue. Draw an arrow from blue to wagon. And whose wagon? Whose wagon? Well, that's Ryan's wagon. Draw an arrow from Ryan's to wagon. And then I have the word wheel. What kind of wheel? Well, it's a broken wheel. Draw an arrow from broken to wheel. And the word a, of course, is always an adjective. It tells me which wheel? A wheel. Draw an arrow from a to wheel. I have in this second sentence, the flowers were placed in a green vase. So I need to find my verb first. So my verb, well, I have the word placed right here, something that you can do. You place something somewhere. But I also have the word were is on my helping verb list. So which one is going to be my verb? Were from my helping verb list or placed? Well, they're both verbs. And were is a helping verb, so that means that were can be used with the word placed. So I'm going to underline both of these words. So my verb is not were or placed, it's both of them, were placed. And I can say in the sentence, who or what were placed? Something or someone in this sentence was placed somewhere. So who or what were placed? The flowers were placed. So underline the word flowers once, were placed twice, and you need to draw a line between those two to separate your subject and predicate. And do I have any other nouns in this sentence? I know the word flowers is a noun, so that does need to get boxed. And I have in a green vase. There's a noun in there. That is vase. It's a person, place, or thing. It's a thing. Vase is a thing, so it gets boxed. And up here, flowers. What kind of flowers? It doesn't tell me what kind of flowers. Which flowers? It doesn't tell me which flowers, so I have which one, what kind, how many, how many. How many flowers? Oh, that does tell me how many flowers. There are 2 flowers. Circle the word 2. Draw an arrow from 2 to flowers. And that's all the adjectives I have for flowers. And let's look down at the word vase. I have what kind of vase? What kind of vase? I have a green vase, definitely. Draw an arrow from green to vase. And then the word a, always, always an adjective. The word a answers the question which vase, a vase, and draw an arrow from a to vase. So make sure you work on those 2 pages. I know it's 2 pages, seems like a lot, but I cut out a little bit of work for us to not have to worry about. And tomorrow, maybe work on Think A on 163 and Think B on 164. Maybe get a little bit of extra practice in for the test.